Hello, welcome back to Homeschool Wherever. My name is Carmen Sognonvi, and in this video, I'm going to explain to you what gameschooling is. As you've been looking into homeschooling, you may have come across this term gameschooling and wondered what exactly it is. So in essence, gameschooling is using games to learn. Now, most of the time this will refer to board games, but there are certainly families that incorporate video games into their gameschooling as well. So what makes this different from just having a regular family game night? Well, the idea is that instead of just haphazardly playing whatever game you guys think is fun, you're being strategic about choosing specific games that will teach specific skills. Now, there are probably very few families that use game schooling exclusively in their homeschool, meaning that they don't do anything but play games and all the learning comes from the games themselves. Most families are using game schooling as a way to integrate into their homeschool or their unschooling. And if you're not sure what unschooling is, I'm going to link below to a video where I explain all about exactly what unschooling is and what it can look like. Now, some families will use games to supplement their learning across all types of different subjects, while other families will use games only to supplement maybe one particular subject. So in this video, I'm going to cover why game schooling is something that you might want to consider incorporating into your homeschool, what subjects can be taught through games, how to find the right games, and most importantly, how to save money so you don't go broke buying tons and tons of board games. So this video is part of a series called Homeschooling Explained. When I first started looking into homeschooling, I was really overwhelmed by a lot of the terminology that I'd never heard before, like deschooling, unschooling, Charlotte Mason, morning baskets. I hope that the series is going to help demystify some of those terms for other new homeschooling parents, so I'm going to link below to the playlist where you can see the rest of the videos in the series. If you're new to this channel, we are a secular multiracial family living in New York City, and we're homeschooling for the first time this year. We have two daughters, Sean, who's in 6th grade, and Ella, who's in 3rd grade. We're really passionate about using travel to bring our homeschooling lessons to life. This channel is all about documenting our homeschooling journey, so if that sounds of interest to you, I hope you'll subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Also, we're full-time family travel creators, so if you'd like to learn more about that side of our lives, check out our travel channel at Top Flight Family. So why should your family try game schooling? What are the benefits? Well, first, games provide kind of a safe space where kids can try things and fail and then try again. Also, games really help to contribute to a positive family culture, because if you're in the habit of all playing games together, that can really help with the interactions between family members. And even though game schooling families tend to stick to games that are designed to increase knowledge in a particular area, even games that are not specifically designed to be educational can have a lot of educational benefits. Kids will pick up reading skills because, after all, every game has instructions that need to be read and understood. They'll learn math skills. Every time they roll the dice, they have to do some math, right, to add up the numbers of the two dice. There's also a lot of counting involved in terms of counting cards or counting steps forward on the board. And there's tons of social skills that are being learned, like learning to be patient, learning to not get upset, learning to wait your turn, learning to remain gracious even when things get really competitive, which is something that I as an adult still struggle with. And then also, don't forget that things that you learn joyfully tend to be the things that you are actually going to remember and retain. So the lessons that your kids learn through games are probably going to stick a lot more than lessons that they learn through some other method which they found boring. So hopefully I've made the case that games in general can have a lot of educational benefits. But let's talk about how games can also be specifically designed to increase knowledge in specific subject areas. So for our family, game schooling is something that we're only starting to dip our toes into a little bit. And I have to say, I was amazed when I started looking into game schooling at the sheer variety of board games that exist out there. Because like many of you, when I think of board games, I probably think of the same 3 or 4 games, right? Like Clue, Monopoly, Life, Candyland, Uno. But that is seriously the tip of the iceberg. And by the way, a lot of game schooling families actually think that Monopoly is one of the worst board games, but that's another topic for another video, or maybe you can do some Googling and read all about it. So the world of games is really huge. There are games that promote language arts, there are games that teach math, there are games that teach science, there are games that teach history, there are games that teach geography, and actually a lot of game schooling families, their kids have learned all of the 50 states by playing games, not through memorizing or writing on maps and things like that. So how can you fit game schooling into your homeschool? Well, here's a few different ideas for you. You can put aside one specific day of the week where that is the game schooling day. So instead of doing traditional lessons to cover certain subject areas, you would play one game per subject. So for example, if in a typical day you're covering math, language, arts, science, and history, instead of using your usual books or curriculum for those subjects, you would pick one game for math, one game for language arts, one game for science, and one game for history. You can play a game at the end of every single school day. Just make it kind of part of the routine. You can pick one single game to be the focus of the entire week and make sure that you play that same game every day of that week so that you get really good at it and you get deeper learning from that game. You can use a game to either start or conclude a lesson, or you can also use a game to sort of reinforce a concept or introduce a new concept. If you're a family that uses unit studies in your homeschool, you can incorporate games into the unit study. If you have multiple kids of multiple ages, one thing you can do is have an older kid play a board game with a younger kid while you work one-on-one with a third kid. And also, if there are other families in your community who homeschool as well and you get together with them on a frequent basis, you can make games a thing that you do as a group. So how do you find these magical games that promote learning? Because after all, if you don't know what they're called, you don't really know how to find them. So this is kind of the million-dollar question, and it really all depends on your family, right? It depends on the age of your kids. It depends on the subject areas you're interested in using games for. It depends on your personal preferences, like if you really hate card games but you really like board games, or you hate strategy games. You know, there's all kinds of personal preferences that every parent or every kid has when it comes to games. The possibilities are really endless. But I'm going to recommend two really good resources that are a great place to start your research. And the first is the Game School community group on Facebook. It was started by Caitlin Fitzpatrick Curley, who writes a blog called My Little Poppies, and she and her family are very, very strong advocates of game schooling, and she also has a ton of great articles on her blog, so you should definitely check her out if you want to learn more about game schooling. Another great resource is right here on YouTube, and it's a YouTube channel called the WALDOCK Way. So Jessica is also a homeschooling mom, and she's very, very passionate about game schooling. So on her YouTube channel, she has a whole playlist of videos dedicated to game schooling, and there are videos in which she recommends specific games for specific subjects, so that's definitely a great resource to check out. Now, buying all of these board games can get expensive. This is not like books where you can just check them out of the library, right? So how do you do game schooling if you're on a bit more of a budget? Well, the first option is to buy secondhand. You can find lots of great board games in thrift stores, and then also Facebook Marketplace is a great place to look. Also look for sales. Every once in a while, Target or Amazon will do sales on board games. And this is where it really pays to be in that Facebook group that I mentioned before, because always there will be someone who posts a heads up to everybody about a sale that's coming up, and everybody will kind of jump on that sale and stock up on board games. Another thing you can do is make game schooling friends. So befriend other homeschool families who are into game schooling and actually borrow each other's games. And then finally, another thing you can do is either make your own games or print out free games from Pinterest. There are lots of very simple games that you can get for free online, or it can also be a fun activity for you as a parent to either create a game yourself or to actually co-design it with your kids, or have kids make their own game. Okay, if you want to learn what unschooling is, check out that video right there. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Homeschool Wherever. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.